Hello, I'm Courtney Fontone. I'm the assistant for the Sensory Awareness Foundation here with Shelley Hainer, one of the sensory awareness leaders that leads class for us and is very involved through the Leaders Guild as well. Thank you, Shelley, so much for being here with me today. I appreciate you taking the time to share a little bit more about yourself as a person and about sensory awareness. I'm excited to sit down and talk with you. I've been in a couple of your classes and just really enjoy your energy. And I wish we could do this in person, but here we are. Why don't you start off by telling me a little bit about yourself and how you came to know sensory awareness?
Thank you, Courtney. Oh, this is so fun. I'm so pleased to be here with you, and I feel very honored to be in a conversation of this type with you on behalf of the foundation. Thank you for considering me. So, um, goodness, I guess how I came to this work was through the arts. I was a dancer as a child. I was classically trained, and then I moved into theater and was classically trained, and then got interested in sports and movement science. And it was natural for me from both a movement appreciation and expression and theater to be very sensorily connected. It was a source of communication. And certainly in theater, through sense memory and emotional memory that would be alive in the body, to improvise for a scene or such. And I remember in the 70s, a book came out called The Body Has Its Reasons, which was about this work through the teacher Thérèse Berthera, who was a Gindler teacher. And I eventually went to Paris, and she invited me to train with her in her first professional stage, and as it was called. And she called her work anti-gymnastics, and brought to it not just a Gindler approach to experimenting, but other influences that informed how she developed what she called anti-gymnastics. And then back in New York, I met Carola Speeds and studied with her for quite some time. I never met Charlotte. And yet, when uh, I would find myself on the mailing list to go to Monhegan for years. I was on that mailing list. I always would try to figure out how am I going to ever get there, because it was a pilgrimage, and I didn't have enough time when I was working full time. So eventually, in 2015, there was a huge conference at Garrison, and I think about 70 people came, and it was like, oh my God, they're coming. And I went to that and just like got so connected to the community. It was wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And through some encouragement from Michael Atkinson in particular, who encouraged me to go to Bara, where I met lots of leaders and other students and practitioners, and studied with Lee there. And so the breadth and scope of sensory awareness leaders and conferences worldwide is just such a heart rub. It's like, being with the artisans of this practice. I mean, a guild has artisans, and the way I feel about this practice is that it is an art and it is a science. It's a way of being, and we can come together and do experiments, but every day is an experiment when you're connected and really tuned in to your own custom-made relationship with your senses, and to understand them and to know which ones lead and what they give you in return, and how to cultivate this inner landscape that has so many layers and is so many nuances and stories to tell. literally through the pores, right? And through the space. And so I would say the one thing that sensory awareness helps me with all the time is slowing down. And it's a lifelong lesson. And even though I may have been told it as a girl, I really, there's so much energy, so slowing down is a good way to start, which is probably why most of our classes start with that kind of pausing to come to one's senses, right? To collect oneself. And the other beautiful thing about the work, apart from, kind of going deep with a specific experiment and having the time for that, because you need the time to go beyond where you think you're done. And to kind of have a mindset about that. And another way of working is through the day, pausing and feeling gravity and taking a breath, and oh yeah, the shoulders can drop, and just, kind of letting whatever's holding on release. Very simple. And maybe that's the place where you want to begin when you start an experiment. But for right now, moving from the kitchen to the living room, that's a good little prompt, right? So I kind of like to work that way and connect the dots, through the day, so that there's more resource, there's more ease, there's more well-being. And then clearly, when we sit to meditate, those of us who meditate, which is another whole way that our sensory life really profoundly connects us to our inner world, our mind, right? The sixth sense of our mind. When the body is still, also really hard for me. I was a queen wiggleworm. They called me in kindergarten, they called me the Jack in the Box, because I was always jumping up, and I would run to the nature shelf at the back of the room and look at, everything was eye level. I was short, even then I was short. So nature was always informing some aspect of my connecting, and the elements that come to play with that. We're made of those elements, and we may have preferences, we may have proclivities, we may have tendencies, and we may not even know we do. So first, to see what's going on. Yeah. Am I very visual? Am I kinesthetic? Am I sound oriented? How do I connect when I wake up in the morning? What's the first sense that lets me know I'm awake? What is that? And that's, these are little prompts, little queries, interests, curiosities, to renew and cultivate that connecting with the person, so-called, the being with, to understand and balance oneself. I've needed a lot of balance emotionally. I'm very intense. So I know that this work, along with other work, but this work is so foundational. It's like the common denominator of everything. I've done lots of therapy and psychoanalysis and Rolfing and Traeger and, lots and lots, Feldenkrais, and sensory. If your sensory awareness is not a friend, if you're not, savoring and cultivating that connection to create with, that's how I'm really loving to language, slow down, connect, however you connect, and then savor that connection. like a good friend. Oh, hello, breath. Yay. You know, and there's a playfulness. I'm naturally playful and childlike. I mean, everyone has that part, maybe buried in there, somewhere, but I don't think so, especially in this community. People are prone to be playful. And then the flip side, of course, is the healing. I mean, the body knows the score, all that science, neuroscience and such, but truly you can, well, two things. Because I'm going to talk about me, I'm in control. I only change or allow something through if there's an old memory that's painful or hurtful or whatever it may be, and I'm not ready for that. My unconscious will take care of me. I can trust that. And if it is coming up through the subconscious, maybe I notice, oh my God, I knocked over a glass of water. Oh my God, I always do that when ... happens. And it's a cue, right? And then I'm prepared to see, oh, maybe something's going to come up through the body, mind, heart. Maybe something's ready to come up. And I'm here now. I'm ready. I can hold it. So this quality of intimacy is precious. It's so precious. I find it precious. And that's where in my leading, I want for others to make that discovery. And it's a challenge to even say that, because I want for them what they want for themselves. That's what I would like for them. So maybe they don't want that. I don't know. Any case.
There is a beautiful uniqueness to sensory awareness and the work that sensory awareness has brought to my life personally in comparison to other meditations where there's a lot more that sinks in with me because of the movement. And as a fellow dancer, like I totally um can relate to how sensory awareness can be brought into that. And I immediately was drawn to it because of the movement. I was able to calm myself and really connect with what I was feeling, hearing, seeing, all of that. Far more deeply than I ever did with any type of sitting still meditation or therapies or anything like that, which of course serve a purpose. But that was the part that really caught my eye the most, was like, oh, we can move around. I can explore what my body wants to do. And I had never really asked myself those questions before. So I love that, you say lead and you don't teach, you lead. And to be able to provide those questions and explorations for people is a really unique gift, and also a way that leaders differ in some ways. So how do you think you may differ from other leaders, other than being your own person, your own human being? But how does Shelley prepare for a class? How do you decide what you might want to suggest as an exploration, or
Yeah,
what might come with you as an offering to a class with you?
right. Well, often, at least the last few times, I like to attend or watch the leader who was on the Saturday prior, and to do that experiment and take something from it, like a baton, or an homage, or, just to have a thread of continuity. So it's not so distinctive necessarily, although it is, because everyone who leads differently. And if you were leading yourself through the day, it would be custom made by you for you. So often I'm working every day or nearly every day myself, and may be interested in something that I think, oh, let me take this to the group, right? I think that's what happened last time when I worked on the legs in particular, which is something I don't think we ever really do, sitting with the legs straight out, challenging to do. Sometimes I have an idea, although I don't know how I'm going to get there. And sometimes I have a very, oh, okay, we're going to do this and then and then okay, and maybe if there's time, I kind of put some things together, and then what happens isn't that, I might start off that way, but then I see what's happening in the room. I don't know how to compare what I do to other leaders, because everyone does themselves wonderfully. They each bring an essence of their exploration, and it's in the offering, in their voice, in the silences, in the space that's left for what, it's like having a chorus of soloists that are all singing the same song.
That's a great comparison. Absolutely. I would agree. Yes.
So, ultimately, everyone is a sound. If we were to be distilled to our vibration, it would be a sound. Everyone is a sound. And so, when you walk into a room, your sound comes into the room, and how it's received, or not, right? How do you know that? What sense is that? How do you feel that in your body? What does it tell you? And then what do you tell yourself when that happens? And how do you pivot that to not be critical if that's so the sensory world is intimately connected with every moment. And when we can break free and you kind of disappear, everything is free. Oh, it's like the girdle goes off, your brain is free. Come back
Yeah.
for more of that.
I felt like I had discovered this secret to unveiling this whole new world, even though I was exactly where I had always been. Right. And I, very childlike, and just reminding myself of how important it is to wonder and to ask and to feel and all of those things, that I can tap into more easily during a 1 hour class, like an online Saturday class. But I struggle with how to integrate it into my daily life. In particular, we all get stuck in the muck of our mundane tasks, right? Like washing the dishes or whatever it might be. And do you have any advice for how people can kind of bring some of that into their own routines, if you will, to kind of reconnect and reintroduce themselves to their environments and where we navigate the world from?
Yeah, that's lovely, Courtney. I actually, this summer in July, I ran a 2-week course every morning, 10 a.m. to 10:40, an experiment, turning it into a prompt to do throughout the day. So I'd love to offer that again. It was really cool. I loved it. And it built on itself. So by the end, you had some continuity of practice every morning. And then you reminded yourself of it, because it's stuff like, every time you get up and sit down, how many times a day do you do that? A lot.
A
So
lot.
so even if, 3 times you remember, oh, okay, how am I going to stand up? How am I going to sit down? Just be there with it instead of, autopilot. So stuff like that. And what we did as the experiment is we really, we slowed down and explored what actually happens. How does the body do that? Or how do I do that? There's also all this discussion about how do we talk about ourselves? The space I'm in, the body, the mind, the heart, the person, the not person, language, we can trip on our own tongues. I think what happens when we are present in new ways through these experiments, we change our state. And in those states, language is not always effable. And when it is, who's talking? So we come into a realm of awe and wonder, which is a really cool place, because it's a place of possibility, imagination, creativity. It's free and it's healing and it's golden. I mean, that it's like honey, or it has other qualities that you might, it changes. It's never the same. It's always fresh. It's nectar, so we wade through, and then we get that, oh yeah. So what did I just do that made that happen? I don't know. I was present. I was present. I was present. I was present. I felt my feet on the ground. I took a breath. My shoulders dropped. I unclenched my jaw. I splashed some cold water on my face. I brushed my teeth with my less dominant hand just for fun. And I have become more and more and more and more ambidextrous just for fun. Just to, there is neuroplasticity happening when you do that. And then that changes everything. Every time there's a connection, the whole of you recalibrates with that information. We're changing all the time. And when we open our sense gates, there's so much.
It's really endless, right? It's as far as you can,
It
as
doesn't.
far or as deep. Is it reaching? Is it inward? Is it, yes,
So
it's
in
hard to explain to other people who have never experienced a class before.
an experiment, the mind will throw whatever it throws up. But when we're connected through weight, through the laws of physics, right? Weight, gravity, momentum, inertia, movement, air informs us that there's movement. Breathe, movement. And how does that feel? Is it blocked? Is it silky? Is it labored? Is it deep? And what's the sensations? And where do you feel them? Environment. You're being informed all the time. And then, what if you are in a place that you don't feel safe? So maybe there's some fear being registered. How does that come to you? How do you know that? So there's a knowledge base in each of our senses that is innate and that we've learned. Because we learn by imitation, by the people around us as children growing up and the environment we're in and so on. And that's just the way it is for everybody. But it's innate. And
So if we're innately able, right, to do to to practice to do this work, anybody essentially can benefit
yeah.
from sensory awareness. Do you have a sense of a population of people that you think would benefit deeply, besides the obvious, literally everyone in a world with constant distraction away from ourselves, even though we're the most connected we've ever been, right? You and I are connected right now from states away.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I know that for example, potentially people with Parkinson's, years ago I worked before I was a senior, I worked with seniors and some folks that had Parkinson's, and it was helpful for balance and walking and steadiness, just exploring. And the other group that comes to mind, I guess, would be children, because they're so curious to begin with and love nature typically, the beauty of parks and playgrounds and music and all of the creative arts that are connected to the senses. Seems like a natural way to grow humans from the beginning.
they're born ready to soak it all in, and they do, right?
Yeah, they do. They do. And you just have to watch them to see how they're making discoveries all the time.
And that question came from, I guess, a more personal place of, I have an aunt who is disabled and has some abilities and some things that she can't do, and we were of course talking about sensory awareness. She's like, well, I could never do a class like that. I can't stand, I can't do this. So I guess just as a leader in general, or your knowledge of the sensory awareness work, it doesn't need to be tailored based on a physical ability of a person. It's arriving to explore how you are able to
Yeah,
show up.
you don't have to be, you don't, we're always in a position, a pose, and a posture, whether we're sitting, standing, or lying down. And there are certain experiments that, when they're done standing up, will reveal certain things to that upright posture and the way weight is, etc. But if you're unable to stand, then it's modified, or you do a different experiment, maybe even to accomplish the same thing. It would depend, you know. But there's always more than one way to do something.
And I've truly learned there's no wrong way to do it.
Correct.
I remember my first class when I really was eager to share, but I couldn't find the words. And I was so shy to say, but I was like, I wanted to shout it out to the world what I had discovered in this really cool new, meditation class. And I did, but you're trying to find the language, and I didn't need it. I just needed to keep it for myself and hold on to it.
Right.
But I didn't want it to go away. So I was like, that means I need to go to my next class.
Well, also to write it down is helpful. if you have an insight of that type, or even if you don't, to journal it or keep a notebook, because I know what you're talking about in terms of sharing after a class, which is a part of the work, an important part, because it is important to put language to the experience. And it's also important for others to hear the wide, vast variety of
Findings,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, it's deeply personal. So any share is a gift, right? And a little package that gets unwrapped by the person giving it to share. And maybe it's too much, maybe it's not enough, maybe it's something you didn't want to hear, maybe it's something that really got you, yes, oh yes, or okay, I'll look for that. It's very stimulating um to give and to receive, and it's so respectfully done, which is really precious, because there's so much Zoom activity these days. And I would say in general, my Zoom experiences have been respectful, but here in particular, because of the nature of what we're doing together and sharing, it's very dear. It's very, very tender.
The community is very welcoming and kind and very supportive, which was really nice to discover in my role, because I didn't know what I was going to discover. So
Right.
I'm very thankful for, being able to speak with people like you. Thank you so much, Shelley.
Thank
I
you,
really appreciate
Courtney.
it.
Have a lovely evening.
You as well.